You are listening to the Enormocast.
When it comes to Sportiva, I often praise the longevity of their venerated classics like the Mira. Because, well, if it ain't Baroque, don't fix it. Italian Baroque, that is. But as we know, I'm a stick in the mud whose glory days are well behind him. But you, dear listener, still have your best days waiting to jump out at you like a puppy wearing a backpack full of caramel corn. So hey, forward thinkers, let's take a gander at what's new over at Sportiva.com. The redesigned Cantana lace is an absolute edging machine. The updated Tarantula line provides comfort and performance at a price point for everybody. The TX2 Evo adds even more performance to Sportiva's stow-and-go approach shoes. And the new Mantra is a minimalist slipper so light and flowy, you'll swear you accidentally showed up to the gym in only your underwear. Just like in that dream you had last night. Don't worry, I just looked down too. So when it comes to keeping you thinking ahead, Sportiva is there with innovation at every turn. Why not see what's up and head over to Sportiva.com or follow them on Instagram. And remember, Sportiva is a proud sponsor of the Enormocast.
Before the dawn of history, on the primordial earth, many, many years before Canada even existed, there lived a tiny creature whose innovation changed the course of evolution. This extraordinary critter, in an attempt to outdo and outlive the prey and predators around it, decided one day to fly. Or glide, or maybe just jump really high. We don't actually know, but that's not the point. The point is that the little Archaeopteryx reached for the heavens and became a legend. What this little rebel could not have known is that its strange, brittle skeleton would be discovered hundreds of millions of years later and inspire the folks at Arc'teryx Equipment to help our own earthbound corporeal forms reach for the sky. Since 1989, coincidentally the year I started climbing, Arc'teryx has been innovating gear and apparel for climbers to perform when the weather becomes predatory, and also to help us look as spiffy as a lizard with feathers while we soar to our own great heights. And now, Arc'teryx has joined the Enormocast to continue the tradition of telling stories of the best and brightest in climbing, as well as the misfits, dirtbags, and fringe dwellers. So, dear listener, raise your glass to that brave little lizard bird thingy that dared to fly, maybe, and let's toast Arc'teryx for helping us achieve our own skyward dreams. Arc'teryx is now a proud sponsor of the Enormocast.
We gotta get
Listen, where you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
big
big
house. We
place
sold
that
it out.
side of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold it out.
20,000
seats.
We really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, La Sportiva, and with support from Maxim Ropes. Maxim has been keeping the Enormocast off the deck since 2012.
And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is April 15th, 2022, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon here in Colorado, and this is episode 240 of the Enormocast, a conversation with Brazilian-American climber Maiza Lima. Have you gotten a load of Maiza Lima yet? You follow her on Instagram? Do you know who she is? She's quite irresistible, outgoing, capable, strong, and I think a lot of the people that work with her within climbing, within the outdoor industry agree that, I don't know, in a lot of ways, I think she's just the perfect representation of, climbing in the 2020s. I'm not sure why I think that actually, but it just feels right. Maiza feels like a sort of a woman for our times right now. But Before we get to that, I am going to spray down the Climbers Festival again in Lander, July 14th to the 17th. I am one of 4 keynote speakers with Brittany Goris, James Kagambi, and Hayden Jameson. A 4-pack. I got a few minutes to tell you what I think about something. Not sure what that's going to be yet. I can tell you that it will have nothing to do with climbing on wet sandstone. That will not be mentioned. If you want to find out, tickets are on sale at climbersfestival.org. And of course, I'll be there all weekend, not just at the keynote. It's a nice time. I have a lot of good memories from that festival, and a lot that are probably gone, alas. Okay, let's get to the conversation with Maiza. Maiza has a story unlike anything I've ever had on the Enormocast. It's an immigrant story, an immigrant song, if you will. Oh, now I'm trying not to do it, not to sing it. Zeppelin. Hi-ya. I did it. That song is sort of apropos, though, because Maiza is kind of the hammer of the gods. The Hammer of the Gods. I should name the episode The Hammer of the Gods. It might be a little esoteric. Can you tell I'm impressed with this woman? Is it showing? All right, then. An immigrant story. Maiza Lima. Disfruta. Let me actually start with my own personal interest thing. Is that house? There's a big section of your Instagram feed where you're building some house somewhere, and as sort of a amateur builder myself, I was extremely interested in that part of your Instagram. So tell me a little bit about this weird house, where it is, and what it sounded like it was basically like you guys were doing a big wall, only it was like the big wall version of building a house, where you just went at it like 12 hours a day or maybe longer every day for a long time. So tell me about that adventure, and then we'll get to the less important things like climbing.
Yeah. In 2018, when my husband joined the military, we were like, let's go buy like a terrain somewhere. And we found this thing for $4,500 and it's a steep hill inside the red. And we're like, 4,500. Well, of course, nobody wants this because it's like 35-degree hill and it's like an acre. So we bought it sight unseen, didn't see it for a few years. And in 2019, we drove there and built a 200 square foot little shed in 5 days. And the neighbors are like, who are you? And so we went there in 2020. And then we're like, we could wait until we're like, have money to build a cabin, or we could decide to build a cabin. You know, there are two ways. And when you just put your mind into something and you just go full on, things are just going to work out, because we don't know when we're going to have money to build a cabin. So we decided, let's just start planning and buying, and then next year we'll just show up and build this thing 30 days.
Right.
And that's exactly what we did. Started making 42 small windows at home, building it, doors, stairs, everything you can think of that we could do pre-made back in Montana. And we just filled this open trailer, closed it as much as possible to drive there like almost 30 hours, and just kind of drove straight there. We got there and we realized the only person we had actually paid to join us to actually help frame for a couple weeks like ghosted us. So he said, okay, if we start this, we're going to have to close and waterproof this. We can't go back to Montana because we're not going to be back in a year. So what do you want to do? And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. And so, you know, all the hard things started happening. I was like, the excavator guy that was going to like excavate like the foundations said he couldn't come because it was raining a lot and it was really steep. So we spent the night digging giant like 6 foot deep, like holes like 30 by 30, because we needed to put this giant like tree logs in. And we lifted all these 3 logs with pulleys and gree-grees and a bunch of retired climbing ropes, because why not? And we just worked like 14 to 16 hours every day. To a point there, my husband like couldn't even sleep because his hands were so swollen, and we were under the rain most of the time. but we were so damn psyched. Like, we wanted to build this thing, and we knew our timeline, and we didn't start framing until like day 12. We only had the foundation and like the things done because we needed time to dry and whatnot. So from day 12 to day 28, it was just like full on, like trying to lift this thing and try to put a roof on, and just basically being like climbers is so helpful because we were like 20 foot off the ground, super exposed, like not roped up at all, just like balancing between beams. And it was like we didn't do the inside at all, so we're going back in June, but like we closed it and we waterproofed it, and we were like, we're so badass.
I mean, it looks cool as hell. Is it like partially in the trees? Like, what's going on? It also is funny because you're Brazilian, and I actually, looking at the pictures, I was like, are they in the rainforest? Because it sure as hell looks. I just assumed like you'd gotten a piece of land in Brazil, but then I've since read that you actually haven't been to Brazil in a really long time, and so I was like, okay, maybe it's in the Cascades because I know you have Seattle roots. I had no idea it was in the red, although I'm sure if I'd read the captions more closely, I would have known that. But just the pictures, it looks like it's in a damn rainforest somewhere, but it's just in the deep trees in the red, huh?
Yeah, and I think that's what like I loved it so much, is because it really reminded me of Brazil, and we named it Amazonia because it's pretty damn close where I came from. So it's very magical place. We're like in love with it and just really excited to go back and finish it.
There's a lot of art put into it too. It's not just some average framed like plank siding kind of house. It's pretty cool looking.
Yeah, my husband designed every square inch, every detail, and he said that's the most normal he's willing to go. And all the wood, even for the flooring, was like pure just rough lumber that we had to like make it work ourselves, and go through like 4 different machines and whatnot. So it's definitely like a lot of love put into that building.
Well, I mean, what's the amenities? Are we has it got running water and electricity?
The entire little community doesn't really have city running water. My husband has put an entire plan project and gave it to the homeowner association, saying, hey, if this amount of people put this amount of money, we can bring city water here. But a lot of the locals are like hesitant, and they're fine. So they survive of giant tanks, and a fire station comes out and refill like the tanks. And you pay a certain amount of money to them. So that's probably what we're going to do for now. So, so it's going to be kind of running water. And we did work halfway through the entire project without any electricity because we asked the city to, put electricity in our lot, and they just delayed us for 2 weeks or 3. So when they finally put electricity, we were extremely excited about it.
Did you have some place you were going, like a coffee shop, to recharge your batteries?
Your tools? So our neighbors next door, they are B&B as well, but they would allow us to come in and use it if we needed to. But we also had a running motor that we could just use it.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, like we didn't really have service. We don't have any self-service down there. So we don't really use our phone other than my little few Instagram stories that I was taking.
No, I was talking about your tool batteries.
Oh, like those we were charging on our neighbors at night.
Cool. Right.
Yeah, they allowed us to like steal a little bit of the electricity.
You can get away with not having electricity on a job site these days with so many DC tools. But you do have to charge those batteries.
Yeah,
so I just imagine you like rolling into some coffee shop and like, setting out like 16 chargers into one outlet or whatever.
Yeah, I think the good thing about this project is it's so like rustic that like the first part of it was a lot of the chainsaw, like a lot.
Right.
It's a full chainsaw. Right. So there's definitely a lot of like other things.
The reason I want to talk about it other than just the fascination with a project like that, and jealousy too. It's just a cool thing to throw yourself into. But it sort of speaks volumes, about what I read about who you are, and, somebody who's willing to, on day 12, be like, all right, we're framing, we got like 20 days to finish this thing. I saw it as once I started reading about you as a person, it became sort of symbolic, I think, in a lot of ways of how you've like led your life up to this point and seeking and meeting challenges. So that's kind of why I wanted to start with it. But I think the big arc of your story has to be this young woman. I don't want to say girl, but we can go back to when you were a girl in Brazil, somehow through, this gigantic arc ending up in Great Falls, is it Great Falls, Rapid Falls, some sort of falls in Montana?
Great Falls, Montana.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that's it's not really even a question yet. It's just this huge idea of of transition through, hardship, through bullheadedness, through stubbornness and also sense of, I don't know, hope that it seems like you and your mother had coming over from Brazil. So can we, I don't know how to frame this if we want to just talk about it chronologically, but we've got Amazon rainforest, we've got Seattle, we've got, Great Falls. There's this incredible journey.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your, where you came from and what that place was like in the Amazon in northern Brazil.
Yeah, it was out there. It was very secluded, remote village that I think until I was 14, they didn't even have electricity or running water, phones or anything like that. So I'd say it was a very exciting childhood because you have all the freedom in the world to just go fishing and go swimming every day and just live this beautiful life outside of technology or anything else. But I think when you get to a certain point and you get exposed to television and things like that, you start realizing what lacks and that you don't really have anything, and sometimes not even what to eat properly. So, the little village, they fought a lot to bring high school to where we were. But I graduated really early. I was 15. And then I realized I'm too young to go to a bigger city and get work. And my parents could never afford to send me to college. And it's what do you do next? And I have an older brother that's sitting in the same position. And, and my dad dealt a lot with alcoholism and gambling, and he wasn't willing to leave. And so we were just sitting there wondering what's next. It was really rough.
You talk about growing up in a place like that and sort of this innocence, I guess, in a way, being a bit shattered by information from the outside world, but also information about your future, what's going to happen. You're saying you're sitting there wondering what's next. So what happened? What made the move? What made your mom and you, I guess mostly your mom, decide that they were going to, try to get out of there?
Yeah. So we had friends that had family on bigger cities and whatnot. And one of these closest friends, she left to try to come to the US and, do that dream, pile some money and go back to Brazil, like a lot of immigrants do, right? And she came in and she brought her children, which were my best friends at the time. And I was heartbroken. But then 2 years later, I don't think it was that long actually, she called my mom and she said, do you want to come to the US? You can work here, you can clean houses, you can do this and that. And within 2 years, you get money to build your house or maybe send your kids to college or something like that. Because my mom always wanted a home that we would wake up when I remember waking up and this wall fell down because it was too weak in our house and we had just plastic covering it for days. There was no hesitation on her side, but at the same time, she didn't want me to stay there because there was no future. Every girl my age was already married with a kid, at the age of 15. So she didn't want that for me. And I always had dreams that I wasn't going to live there forever and that I was going to have a better future. I believed that so much. And she said, do you want to come with me? And I said, but I really want to go to college. She said, you go to college and we come back. Just come and help me do this. And I was yes. So we had never even traveled outside our state.
till then, and all of a sudden we're getting like passports and everything funded by this friend that was here so we could pay her back. And we're traveling, and we traveled to Mexico because the plan was to cross the border and not fly to the US because we could never get a visa. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did. And the first time it didn't work out. And then the second time, flew back to Mexico, like got a bus ride all the way to the border. I had to ride with the luggage for 20 hours because of check-in points and whatnot, and survived. We stayed with a family for a week in the border. It was like December. It was like pretty cold, and it was the first time that I felt cold in my life. And didn't have the proper clothing, let me tell you. And right. 5 days later, these people come and they say it's time to cross, and we just went for it, and we followed these people with some other people, and like we walked. Like that was the first time that I walked a lot, like hiking. And I think that entire process got my mom and I even closer together because we were there to like protect each other if anything happened. And we ran out of water, we ran out of food, we were freezing at night. I remember crying a lot from being really cold, and she was there for me. And we eventually, like 3 days later, we like made it to the other side, and you know, someone drove us to Seattle or something, and it was like Christmas Eve when we got there, and the only clothes I had was the clothes on my body. Yeah.
In the stuff I've read, obviously you've been a little bit reluctant to talk about, especially about the journey, and you know, obviously the legality of it. You have your green card now, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But I mean, what made you decide that it was okay to start talking about it? And start talking about your background, because this isn't the first time. Like I said, I read an article from at least a year ago where you laid out a bunch of this stuff. What made you decide that it was okay, or that you weren't, you know, scared or protecting, you know, the people that were involved?
First of all, for 14 years, I never opened my mouth to talk about it. And pretty sure friends that I have that are close-ish still don't know half of this. Mm-hmm. For sure they don't. At least they don't know how exactly I came, you know, and it's terrifying. Like the fear of judgment is too big, and it's not even like, oh, they're going to call immigration. It's literally like they're going to judge the shit out of me. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm ready for this, you know. I don't want to be seen with those eyes. But then, you know, I got my green card, and I was already climbing, and maybe climbing like gave me more confidence to just be myself, and maybe now that I didn't feel that I was like in such danger and I could actually travel and do things, maybe I felt like I could be also a big representation of people that are in the same shoes. And I know that there are a lot of us out there that are still struggling with this, and why not start talking about it, because that's something I know really, really well and understand really well the process. And I got confronted on my green card interview when she was yelling at me about my mom crossing me when I was 17. And I said, don't you dare talk about my mom like that, because you don't know like what hell we've been through and the things she's been through to actually like for us to actually be here. So it's more like, it's better when you don't know better sometimes.
Right.
And we definitely didn't know any better. And people are just like, yes, immigration is such a pain and ICE is such a pain. And I understand, but I'm also very thankful for the opportunity to still be here and be forgiven and be able to call this country now home.
Well, tell me a little bit then about you guys' life in Seattle and how you went from, Amazon to living in a city, and then kind of rediscovering the outdoors and finally climbing. Because one of the other interesting things about talking to you is that you're 27 years old when you find climbing, and it's almost a joke on the show to talk about that as a late comer to the sport, because we're so used to basically kids climbing out of the womb, so to speak, because of climbing gyms. So tell me about your life then in Seattle, what you were doing and leading up to, you had such this connection, I think, with the outdoors. It was just life when you lived as a kid. Everything was outdoors, it would sound like. And then you're in a city and then it seems like you sort of rediscovered it.
When you get to Seattle at that age, you're just like discover this whole new world, and you start, obviously we were working so hard and cleaning houses like from day one. And it was really tough job and we were working really, really hard. And, I was like in the party scene a lot because come on, that's what Brazilians do. And, the high heels and fun and whatnot. It was just not fully fulfilling. I've always had like this dream to be like a dancer and like an athlete, but I left a really tough like relationship and met this group of friends, like all Brazilians, and they're like, took me hiking. I was like, this is satisfying. Like, this is like worth like going to bed early for, so in the weekends, that's what I started doing, just hiking, but just always that feeling that I needed something a little more extreme because I think I'm an extreme person. And so that's when I heard of this nonprofit organization called the Mountaineers. And my friend said they do climbing. And I was like, I don't know what climbing is. Like, but that sounds exciting enough, right? So I go to the website and I see something. I was looking for anything that said climbing. And the only thing that climbing, because I think that was like July or August, there was something called sport climbing course in October. And it was in the Tacoma area, so it was a little bit far from where I was living, like a couple hours away. But I was like, whatever, like I'm signing up for this. And I'm such a not like techie person that I didn't even think about going to Google and like Googling what sport climbing meant. Or, and didn't really know sport climbing gyms were a thing either. I just went there, signed up, and waited for my turn to show up at this thing, and it showed up at this branch, and they're like, this is a harness, and this is how you put it on, and this is a belay device and whatnot. And I was always scared of heights, so obviously it was awful experience at the first time, but it was also very exciting, and I wanted to do more.
Yeah, and I have a question too, going back to this girl in Seattle, young woman in Seattle. I kind of also want to get a little bit of your impression of, this change. You lived in this village, very little technology, no technology almost, all the way down to in your early life not having any amenities to being in an American city. Did that sort of play into, what you're talking about with this like party lifestyle? Like, it's like the Amish have this thing called the Rumspringer where kids get to go and be just normal teenagers or whatever, or young people in the city for a year. And they just mostly like, lose their minds and party and like themselves into the ground because it's kind of overwhelming. Was there a bit of that, or like what was your impression as a 17-year-old standing in the middle of Seattle, months after having been in a jungle in Brazil?
Yeah, it was like, honestly, like super wild because I always heard of that lifestyle and always wanted to be a part of it in somewhat, because I think you are like who you surround with so much. Everybody you're surrounded with was so much like that, and even in my village, like we were like the family with the least amount of money. And so like I could never like keep up with my friends or like dress like them. My mom would sew my clothes out of like scrap like fabric and whatnot. And now I can actually afford to go to at least Ross and dress myself like good enough to like go out and put some high heels on and just like, so there were like two sides of me really, because there was this side of me where just like I've conquered the world and I feel so good and look at this cool life I'm living, and I was able to get out of that place. But then there was always this side of fear, is like, am I gonna get arrested? When am I gonna get arrested? When do I have to go home? Like, so it was a double-edged like sword, because there was a lot of fear always involved on am I gonna get stopped by the police and be sent back to Brazil?
Did you ever walk into situations where people were, using that against you as far as employment or just threatening this idea that if I turn you in, you're out of here?
Absolutely.
Or that kind of thing?
Yeah. I've definitely gotten many times like threatened to be sent back. And the funny part about this is that I haven't really gotten threatened by Americans much, but by Brazilians.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So a form of manipulation then.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I mean, but again, like you spent a solid decade or more living that life. But let's go back to that, to the climbing, and if that provided you sort of, I don't know, a way forward from living in fear, from living in a place where you could be manipulated if somebody found out, things like that. So go back to the climbing question, I guess, and tell me what you think hooked you into that specifically, and even moved you on from hiking.
Yeah, so I did the sport climbing course, but it was like short-lived. And the next year I did the basic alpine climbing, and then I got really hooked because I was like, every weekend I had to summit something, and summited all the big volcanoes and everything you can think of, like for the entire season. And the next year I did the intermediate, where we did like some alpine ice climbing, and I learned how to lead and set my anchors, and became a instructor for the organization and part of their committee and all these things. And it was really exciting. And then I think I always say that I got lazy, but I started going to the climbing gym more like consistently, and I felt so strong. And I think that feeling really like helped me like feel more confident in myself. And I started like taking in more and more like that, and just like going sport climbing more, because finally like I felt like I found something that has suited me. I found this sport that it doesn't matter what age I start, like I can still be the best I can be, and I can still see progress. And it was just this beautiful thing that happened to me, and obviously also addicting, right? It's all you think about. And the hardest parts were, the mountaineers had a trip to Squamish. Their rock 2 was in Squamish, and I had to make like this terrible excuses why I couldn't come, and why they should give one to me in Leavenworth instead in Washington. And like my friends were always going there.
And that has to do with crossing the border, right?
Yeah, I couldn't cross the border. I couldn't even get close to the border. Like every time I saw a border patrol car, I'm like, okay, nothing can happen here, So there was like always like all these excuses why I couldn't go outside of the United States to climb with my friends, and because I was just never ready to tell them, yeah, sorry, I'm a housekeeper, but I'm also illegal and I just can't go anywhere. Like you're just not ready to tell people that. So you just live with that and just make up your excuses. But at the same time, there's like a huge amount of amazing climbing in the US, and in Washington. So like, it's not that I needed to go anywhere.
I climbed 27 years, I think, before I went to Squamish for the first time. So
there you go.
And I can cross the border just fine. There's plenty of other stuff to do down here
for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just circumstance, but it took me a long time to go there too. Even though that's kind of a backyard thing for Seattle climbers.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's keep on the sort of climbing track. You're out spending a lot of times rock climbing. I mean, I asked this to a lot of kids who started climbing earlier than that, with parents who had different ideas for how they were going to live their life. How was your mom with this idea of you becoming a rock climber?
Oh, my mom was like 100% in with me. Like she was full
cool.
like fully in. I mean, we were working together at that point. We were cleaning 5-6 houses a day, and she would like, I don't know, drop me off at the climbing gym, or let me go home earlier so I could go train, like do a hike, like, like a training hike or whatever, or finish early so I could go meet friends and climb in the summer in the afternoon or something like that. And even financially support me on climbing and climbing trips and things like that. She was never like, oh, this sounds dangerous or anything. She was just like, full on embrace this. Like, I know this is not going to bring you any future because you really just need to go to college. But I see that you're happy and I haven't seen you this happy. So I'm just going to 100% support you.
Nice. So she wasn't like, I brought you all the way here so you could get killed on a rock climb.
Zero. I've taken her climbing and she was way more comfortable on a rock than I was. Like,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at some point it evolves into, what we like to call lifestyle, right? Which is kind of what this podcast is about in a lot of ways, is talking to people who've made it, a big and strongly important part of their lives. Is sort of just the only prerequisite for, I guess, coming on the show. So tell me a little bit about a transition to a lifestyle as a climber, identifying as a climber, where you could actually move away from working that hard and move into sort of, a place where climbing can take a big part of your life. Isn't this like side project you got to scrape money or scrape time away to do?
I think it was 2018 when my husband was sent to Texas. Because he joined the Air Force. When I realized,
let's back up real quick.
I'm not.
You met your husband through climbing, right?
I met him through climbing. We got married climbing. And then he joined the Air Force. And that was a pretty hard decision. And, everything is hard when your husband's gone for so long and all these things. But like the biggest decision was like, shit, now I'm going to have to quit cleaning, which I never thought it was going to ever happen. And because we're going to be sent somewhere. So I decided to quit 6 months before we got stationed anywhere else and to just take my Subaru out on the road and just see what this thing was all about. It was good. I didn't love it. I like the security of home. I like to have something to go back to. But,
So basically you're saying you went on a road trip in your Subi.
Yeah.
To go rock climbing.
Yeah, I did.
And were you by yourself?
I was by myself.
Okay.
And it was not perfect. I don't know if I like being alone that much.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, and then after that, we moved to Montana and I realized I can't really get a good job here. I mean, I don't have a college degree. Like, how are we going to make this work? So I would be living off photo shoots, and I'm lucky enough that I get a lot of those. So I was always traveling like back to Seattle or any place, just to do photo shoots and going whenever I went, I would just spend like a couple of weeks with my mom helping her clean houses and make some money extra. And that's how it started. Just digging, like diving right into it.
All right, well, let's back up. When you're talking about photo shoots, you're talking about climbing?
Not necessarily. Like ever since I started like going outdoors, I've always gotten chances to do photo shoots for REI and big brands and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
outdoor in general,
outdoor in
not
general.
necessarily just climbing.
Yeah. So
But we're not talking about like a model sort of fashion or anything like that.
No, I
We're
wish.
talking about just the outdoor sphere. How did these opportunities fall into your lap? And how did that start? That you were being asked to, or you were seeking out, being a model for whatever company that was interested in it? Did it start organically, or is it something that you sought?
It just happened through friends that like recommended me, and then brands would like me, and or a lot of photographers would just reach out to me on Instagram and be like, I like you. I really would like to work with you on a shoot and things like that. So I'd say that Instagram was definitely a big part of it, because that's how people actually found me and they were interested in working with me. And they were like, I want to work with you again. And just get recommended to another person. And that's kind of how it started.
Was that pretty surprising to you, or
yeah,
that those opportunities all of a sudden were enough to like almost feel like you were bringing an income in that mattered?
Oh yeah, it honestly is still shocking, and like it has developed into a whole new thing, but I still like cannot even believe it. And then people tell me just enjoy, because you're getting old.
You're aging out. They're gonna find a younger model to replace you with.
Exactly. Soon. But you know what? Like, I'm just gonna take it all in as much as I can.
It sounds like it was just an organic thing that, fell into your lap. But it's interesting to me because you were such this private person, by necessity. You had to sort of like, keep this big part of your life quiet, out of fear that was justified, probably partially just internal fear, also, security for yourself, for your mom. And pretty suddenly, because you're talking about like 2018, 2019, so the last 3 or 4 years, you become this public person, mm-hmm. and you've got me asking you tricky questions about immigration and things like that. Has that been a feeling natural based on your personality? Was it hard to suddenly realize that you do need to start sharing parts of your life? The one thing about professional whatever athlete that I find some people kind of don't understand, even the people that are doing it, is that being a public figure means sharing and means showing your face and means talking about your story. It's what the job literally is. And I even, people don't have as difficult a background as you become professional climbers. And then they're like, wait a minute, I have to talk about myself. I can't just shut up and climb and do rad shit. So has that transition been a difficult one for you, or has it felt natural, or, having me in your face right now asking you these questions?
Actually, I am the biggest extrovert you'll ever meet. God, I like to talk a lot, and I don't hide anything, or I don't like to. And so those 14 years were actually pretty terrible because that's not something I usually do. I love sharing and I love letting things go. So this is great. And just being able to share and being able to, just let it out and maybe find someone that can relate is honestly pretty amazing. I was just guiding in Mexico, and while after guiding out, the guys would just go back to the big house and go like tuck in their rooms and kind of recharge. And I would just go get a cup of margarita and go hang out with all the climbers, all the clients. And they're all like, who are you? And why are you always sitting on like the client's laps and just hanging out with them and just like having the best time for so many days straight? Like, don't you need a recharge? I'm like, hell no, I'm fine.
Dealing with your immigration status has clearly opened up opportunities. You just mentioned going to Mexico. You're able to cross the border now, obviously. So
first trip to Mexico.
Yeah, since, right? Yeah. Second trip, first trip that you were comfortable with, I guess we might say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the opportunities seem to be coming in. You've also taken an opportunity to sort of dip your toe into social justice that we've been dealing with in climbing pretty heavily for the last couple of years, at least. Being a woman, being a climber of color, I would imagine the layman sort of American would mistake you for African American. Would that be a accurate estimation of most people?
Yeah.
Right. Even though you're Brazilian, but that puts you into this group. Being a woman and also being an immigrant, there's a bunch of different ways in which you could go after talking about social justice, and you have. So what has drawn you to that? Has it also just been a natural fit? Again, as someone with a different personality might just want to be a climber and not get involved in those sorts of things, but your public persona you have.
And I always say that you have to do what feels right for you and what you can do. Like, people shouldn't be forced to talk about it if they are not comfortable doing so. Like I just feel like everybody has a calling, and we should do it if it feels right. Nobody should be forced to do things just because they're told to do, right? I've always wanted to develop routes because, again, I like working. I really do. Like, I never went to college, and I don't think I could sit through college because I hate working with my brain, but I like working with my body. And I'm like, how can I give back to the community? Shit, I can go put some boats up and I could clean some routes. And it was so perfectly because we were just talking about, route names and, things that we wanted to change in our country. And I was like, this is so perfect, because even though, like, for me, it's hard to talk about the race part of things because sometimes I never see like people looking at me because of my color.
Mm-hmm.
I could talk about hardships of being an immigrant, and that's why I named my first route the American Dream, because it's something that I can really embrace and I really understand. So, and that's the thing, you should defend and talk about the things you really, really understand.
The American Dream, I did note that when I was looking into your background here. And the idea of that is even this thing that I think has been in contention for a few years. Just what that means, who deserves it, who gets it. What is your sort of like, I mean, you named the route after that. So tell me about what that meant to you as an immigrant when you first got here, what it continues to sort of mean to you. As obviously someone you consider yourself an American, what does that mean to you? And like, I guess, how would you, in sort of an argument about what that is, what's your take on the American dream and how it applies to you?
So America, to most of us immigrants, I mean, honestly, to most people, is a country of opportunity. You do not go anywhere abroad and you just find like jobs that you get good pay for, even if you don't have a college degree. Mm-hmm. So here you come to America, you find a way to, if you're a hustler, you will make it. and that's why like the American dream is such a big thing, because you can definitely make it if you work hard. And so like this is like the perfect country. Like if you go to Brazil, I'm so sorry, like, and you just have like laborer jobs, you're not going to make it. But here, cleaning houses, you can make it. Doing roofing, you can make it. Just doing anything, you can make it, because this kind of job is actually very valued and valuable. And I think that's the American dream, like where you can actually grow and you can actually get by and you can actually have a pretty good life just by working on this type of job. Mm-hmm. I think that we all made a choice and we chose to be here and do this type of work. So, I understand that like some people say, oh, they're stealing our jobs, but like, are you guys really willing to do this type of job? Right? Everybody here just values like college so much, which is great. But sometimes a little too much. But we need those people that work hard. And like immigrants they're willing to work hard. And they made a choice. We made a choice to come. And we knew what we were getting ourselves into. So, and great if we get an opportunity to go to college here and to grow ourselves. But sometimes that's just not the case, because that's not where we came from. I never had a chance to go to college because of my legal status, and I could cry about it. I could just embrace it and be like, that's my life. And I'm just going to kind of make the best out of it. Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to the climbing. What else sort of drew you to developing routes? Was it only because you wanted to make a statement about naming them, or what else is involved with it?
I think for me, more like the giving back to the community, especially where I came from. I'm sorry, especially where I am, where I get into this town and there's not a climbing community. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. and I realize I'm the only female climber in this entire town. That's also not good. And how can I just, I don't know, do something, something else. So I realized there is rocks not that far, because every climbing area is 2 hours away. Mm-hmm. But there is like an hour away, there's some hard ass quartzite. Hey, why not? Why not start there? Mm-hmm. Easier access that you can just go by myself and not only do this thing, but I actually like get better at it, because I absolutely love, I love the construction side, right? And it's using a tool and it's creating this thing. So it's kind of goes hand in hand for me. So that's how it started. Like, I mean, I always wanted to put up a route, but now I'm like into it. I just want to keep doing it.
Where did you learn how to do it?
My husband showed me how to use a drill a long time ago in our basement. And I watched videos on how to put bolts, and he took me and was just like, this is how you do it. This is how you make sure it's good. And this is that. And talked to someone else that had bolted before. And I'm like, I can do this. Let's spend time there by myself.
Right. But was there any type of like, talking about just the other end of it? Because putting bolts in is one thing, and putting a safe bolt in, that's all kind of like, construction knowledge. But what about, what makes a good route? Because one of the things that I've railed against a little bit is the idea of anybody can put a bolt in. And, I can give you just in our community plenty of examples where, just because somebody knew how to put a bolt in, they put up just like this enormous botched mess with a bunch of bolts in the wrong place, too many,
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about the climbing end of it? How have you sort of like figured out, to create a good route? Has it been trial and error? Has there been anybody that's offered advice on that to you?
So far, it has been super natural. Everything I've put up, I'm like, this is so good.
Right. 5 stars, 5 stars.
I don't know if it's like, if I have a good eye. But
wait a minute, are you getting other people that are telling you that? Because there is the first ascensionist bias that goes with like every time I've put a new route up, it's like a 5-star classic, that people should come.
That's true,
worldwide to do. But,
but
in general, your feedback's been good, is what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. The first route, there's definitely like boats that I want to change places, because I feel like it can get in the head of certain people when they're like, whoa, this is pretty far. But I'm like, oh, it kind of makes sense. But if you don't know where you're getting yourself into, like, it's better to like overprotect it than under. Mm-hmm. But the other routes so far, like, I climb it multiple times. I'm a sucker for like really good, really flowy sport climbing. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate is well-bolted, flowy sport climbing. And so there's definitely a lot of trying before I commit to a bolt.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this too. As a woman, and you've definitely made statements about representing for your gender out there in the sport. One of the things that's been noted, and I think is, sort of statistically pretty clear, is that there's not a ton of women route developers, especially if you double down to like, the kind of construction, banging it out, bolting a bunch of routes at a cliff, real like hardcore development. You kind of, it's definitely a boys club. It's been a boys club traditionally. I still think it remains that way. What do you think either makes you uniquely interested in it, or what do you think the barriers have been, and why they've been there to development for women?
For women,
yeah,
I think first of all, women are a little bit held back when it comes to like using power tools and things like that, and we're always like more intimidated to do things like that, or we like don't believe ourselves enough. And I think that's huge. And I just think that I'm like pretty nosy. And I like to do the hard things, and I like to do the different things. And so I'm always looking for something that is challenging and hard. And don't get me wrong, I'm scared shit of getting into new things. But at the same time, like, I'm confident enough that I can do it. And so all I need is like that one support, that one push. And sometimes it doesn't come easy, right? So and I talk to a lot of girls that like want to learn how to put bolts on and like develop routes and things like that. And the thing is, we're always waiting for that one mentor or that one person. But let's be honest, like, people are busy, and sometimes those people won't come. And so it's hard. It's hard to get out there. Like, you can't just get out there on your own and be like, I'm going to learn how to put a route up. You need that support. You need that mentor. Yeah, that's hard. I've called Jonathan Segrist and this other guy that develops in Vegas a lot, and I'm like, I want to come and learn more from you guys and learn how to put good routes up, and like, all your techniques and stuff like that. But it's never happened, but I still want to. Like, I want to learn more and grow into it.
Right. I mean, you've also got like people like me out there grousing about shitty roots, you know? So it's like, you know, there are these like, I think, barriers to even trying it. I also feel like, you know, as women have obviously created a bigger space for themselves within climbing. I mean, that's clear to me in my 30 years. And we're talking like year by year. 15 years ago, there was way more women in climbing than when I started. 10 years ago, that had increased exponentially. And we're getting to this place where it's, you know, I don't believe it's like parity in terms of influence, but as far as numbers, it's getting pretty close. And so part of me though is also like, well, it's a little too late to the game because, you know, you're in this place where you have this local rock that has not been developed because you're in the middle of nowhere as far as climbing is concerned. But, you know, there's also just this logistical problem of like, there's just not that much left in the front country to go out and put bolts in. And so if we had this army now of women who are like, okay, it's our turn. It's, you know, we want to become developers too. It's like, well, I don't know where you're going to go because, you know what I mean? Like it just is a problem of like resources. It's all been used up by the dudes.
Yeah. And that's when we have to realize that there is a lot of work to be done out there and things to be rebolted and replaced because that's what the community needs. So it's not that you need to just go hog an untouched route and put new boats in. You can still do the work and replace boats and help the community and touch the stuff that has already been developed that needs work. I mean, I was trying to help rebolting in Potrero because I was like, man, this place really needs someone to help. You know what I mean? And so it's not just about the rock that's untouched, but the rock that has been touched a little too much and the hardware needs a little bit of love.
Right. That's true work, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's like where you don't necessarily even get the glory out of putting up an awesome new climb that people love. It's just pure construction to go back and replace bolts.
But it's satisfying, you know, and that's always what I look for is that satisfaction.
Yeah, I mean, and are you in a position where, you know, you feel as though you would be an able mentor to women who are interested in getting into route development?
So that's the plan. I definitely have a lot of friends that want to do it and learn. I feel like I know the basics, but I'd love to even like learn a little bit more before I can go out and just start showing everyone how to do it. I did go to Smith last year and we developed this route outside the park that actually sucks a lot. And all of us put a boat up and stuff like that. You know, I just show them how to, you know, put the boats and stuff. And they each had a chance to like put a boat and everybody was psyched and looked great. But the route was chaos pile and it's like 5'10" with like a terrible like V7 boulder problem in the middle and like 5'9". So we're all like, this shit sucks.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you at least could admit it, because, like I said, a lot of route developers, like everything they touch is like the greatest climb ever put up. So that's a good. You're on your way to that discernment. I think helps make someone a good route developer is knowing when they've botched it or maybe should have left something unbolted that got bolted.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so.
I 100% agree with that one. But yeah, I think for me right now, like I would love a little bit of like go out for a week or two, like and hang out with someone that's like developing and just really like learn the little tricks and whatnot. And there's so many types of boats that use in different rocks and things like that. So I think it's very important to have that knowledge and to really understand how to look at a route and be like, that's a good one, before I just start like teaching everyone how to. I mean, same thing. Putting bolts is easy. Yeah, I mean, even at the wall that I developed, some of my routes, there's still potential and there's still a lot of things that could be good, but I haven't seen a line that I'm like 100% sure. So I'm like, I'm not even going to touch it. Like, I might put anchors and set up TRs and try to find a line, but I'm not convinced. So like, why am I going to just like put a bunch of boats in there? You know, someone else might have a better vision than I do.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, the humility of that is, I think, important to the process, as anything, you know, for someone like you. What did Jonathan say? Was he down?
Well, you know, he's a busy guy, so we'll see. He was
probably polite.
There is another guy. He owns this climbing hold company in Vegas, and he develops a shit ton. I don't know why I forgot his name right now, but he climbs a lot out there in the big limestone caves, and he develops a bunch of those hardcore climbing. And he like taught me a lot, like through cool. like messages, but I'm like, I just need to come over, dude, and like and do some stuff. Well,
I mean, shit, just offer to hike all that hardware out to some obscure cliff that he's working on. It might be enough of a self-invite to work, because that shit is heavy, and there, you know, and part of this resource thing is that these bolted cliffs that were, you know, ignored because they were like too big a hike or too big a drive are all getting developed now, you know. So shit's getting further and further away from the trailhead, and that's when carrying drills and batteries and bolts can get a little bit old. Well, cool. So, you know, back to your climbing a little bit, and then we'll finish up. But the sport climbing you've been developing, what about your sort of trad and crack climbing? Is that something that interests you? Have you been delving into that on your road trips and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the most trad I've done was when I was on that road trip in 2018. I've climbed the original route in Vegas with a friend. And then I climbed Cloud Tower, and those were like pretty dope, but very like tiring because they're like so long and so hard. And, you know, I've dabbled into it like with the mountaineers, and that's, you know, I had to become like a climb leader. So I took a lot of people like alpine rock climbing and things like that. But I just have not spent that much time in it. To be like, this is secure, like I'm so good at it, you know. I can hand jam and foot jam and things like that. but I always want to get good at it, even schedule like a trip to Yosemite in a couple of months, but unfortunately I had to schedule something else on top of it, because I swear to God, like my schedule like for the years already like looking like absolute crazy shit, and I'm like can't find time to do anything.
Well, that's a good problem. So you sort of fell into being, you know, a public figure, a sponsored athlete, sort of organically. It kind of happened, but now that you're solidly in it, you know, what's your pitch to sort of what you offer these companies that have you as an ambassador? What do you think you bring to the table?
So this is the first time I'm actually doing a pitch. Because I never had to do one.
Oh, you've never had to do one?
No, I never had to do one. Luckily for me, it all just came my way.
Okay.
So I definitely a lucky person, because I think if it depended on my pitch, I'll never get.
Right.
I'll never get sponsored. So I'm just lucky.
All right. Well, let me help you work on it then.
I better work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, like, what I just bring is like really good personality, honestly. And I'm like I love people, and I just can't see bad in people. And that's a problem in one way, because they're like, did you see how that person was looking at you or talk to you? I'm like, no, not at all. They're fine. You know, so, and I think that love for people and that, you know, the excitement and the way I treat people is probably what has gotten me to where I am. And it sounds maybe cliche, I don't know. Definitely not climbing hard, even though I try.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Maiza for sitting down, coming through the internet. I hope to run into her in person sometime soon. I think she brings a lot of fun to the cliff. Don't you think? And some serious try hard. I like a little dash of both, frankly. And if you're compelled to find out more about Maiza, I think Instagram's probably the best spot. Maiza Lima Rock is her handle, and she's doing all sorts of stuff. She guides, there's clinics, she does events with Black Diamond, with Sportiva, so there's certainly opportunities to learn from her and just to meet and hang out. And I wanted to remind you that though I have my sponsors, this thing is also run by your generosity. Nothing is behind a paywall here at the Enormocast. Nothing. It's all out there. But if you do not feel like supporting the sponsors, and if even worse, you're one of those people that skips right to the interview, of course, you're probably not here anyway. You probably already shut it off. So I don't know why I'm even talking to those people. They're already on to the next podcast, like gobbling up the samples at Costco. But the rest of you guys, if you feel like it, you can always donate. If you go to enormocast.com, there's a donate button. Click on it, drop a couple bucks. It adds up, helps out, pays for the whole thing. Okay, I hope you also, like Maiza, are trying hard and having fun, but being just careful enough not to quite stomp on the fun, but also not to get hurt or worse. So check your knots.